I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 77 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, March 7, 2023, the committee meets to discuss on its study on the high-frequency rail projects for the first part of the meeting and committee business for the second part. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application.
That all witnesses have been tested for sound and interpretation purposes for today's meeting and have passed the test. Colleagues appearing before committee today, we have la Chambre de commerce de l'industrie de Trois-Rivières, Monsieur Patrick Massicotte, président par vidéo.
Patrick Massicotte, President by video conference.
Action Canada, we have Terrence Johnson, President, welcome. Et de VIA.
And from VIA HFR, we have Martin Humblot, Chief Executive Officer, Marc-Olivier Ranger, Corporate.
Project Director. We will begin with opening remarks from all of our witnesses, and we'll start off with Monsieur Humblot. La parole est à vous. Vous avez 5 minutes.
The floor is yours, Mr. Humblot. Thank you, Chair. Even though I've only been in my new job for 2 weeks, I thought it best to be here with you today, even if I may not have all the answers to your questions. My colleagues are here to support me. You know, what convinced me to join the team was to develop a modern service that connects the communities of the Quebec-Toronto corridor, was in fact the opportunity to carry out a next-generation act of public service. The success of our project depends on many factors, starting with its acceptance by society. Therefore, I'm both here to talk and listen. Openness and collaboration are crucial for the future of this project. Project acceptance means listening to Indigenous communities, stakeholders, and future passengers. As you may know, we are a Crown corporation that's barely 10 months old, and our mission is to revolutionize transportation by offering superior rail service in the Quebec-Toronto corridor. This is important, but it's also about bringing people together and opening doors. It's to offer an environmentally friendly, on-time, and affordable service to enhance passenger experiences. This is because it's an absolute necessity for now, for the world of tomorrow, and for generations to come. We will bring 3 of the country's capitals and 2 of its largest cities closer together, strengthening the link between 2 of Canada's largest economic hubs and provide services to 15 million people in an ever-growing corridor. We will reduce the distance between cities and communities, but also between friends and families. Allow me to make just a personal aside. I've been developing large infrastructure projects in Quebec and Canada for approximately 25 years, mainly in the project corridor. I'm not an expert on trains, but in all of this time, I used my car to get to Quebec City and Ottawa. However, I flew to Toronto. Why is that, you may ask? Because departures aren't frequent enough, and trains aren't on time or fast enough. And just adding trains isn't enough. We don't own the tracks, whereas freight railroad companies do. And increased traffic affecting freight transport isn't good for, and I know this a bit because of my former background, isn't good for the economy either. Our mandate is not to keep doing the same thing. We want to offer a desirable solution.
This project provides choice by shortening travel times and connecting communities. It's about running twice as many trains, faster and on time. Many people ask about speed, understandably so. We will reach high speed where it's feasible, safe, and affordable. For your information, in the current procurement process, each team bidding on the project must provide 2 solutions. First, they must be able to achieve speed up to 200 kilometers per hour, so faster than current services. But second, bidders will propose services to go even faster. Allow me this comment. The objective is not top speed for the sake of speed, but it's about saving time. And faster average speed, which shortens travel time, is the way to go. You all already know how frustrating it is to get to Ottawa by plane or car and crowded airports and congested highways. Well, ultimately, this project is about a more flexible, faster, and convenient way to travel. On another front, passenger transportation will remain an important source of GHG emission as the population grows. Unless we offer a true, better, sustainable choice that affects the behavior, well, the situation won't change. So as well, putting passenger trains on dedicated tracks provides more capacity for freights. So oil and grain will then reach port faster also. So in our solution, we benefit people, the economy, and the planet. I know this project is undeniably complex. It's also ambitious. But with the participation of the private sector, we think that we have chosen the right approach, and our project is gathering momentum. The government is leading a procurement process to find a best-in-class team that will work with us. In July, 3 bidding teams qualified for the government request of proposal, and the goal is to pick one of those consortium by next year. Alors, comme je l'ai mentionné, j'occupe mon nouveau poste depuis...
As I mentioned, I've only been in my new role a short time, and I'm spending a lot of that time listening to communities, to you, to advice from stakeholders and the public. But I intend to carry out this project with complete transparency, and the committee will be kept regularly informed of our progress. Thank you for listening. We are available to answer any questions you may have, both my colleagues and I. Thank you very much, Mr. Amblou.
Johnson. Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Good evening, Mr. Chairperson, honourable members. I am very glad to be with you in person today to discuss high-frequency rail. My journey from Chatham, Ontario this morning scheduled for 10.5 hours. If the promises of HFR are kept, 6.5, a big difference. HFR, when initially announced, was supposed to quickly triage Canada's inability to run our trains on time and operate enough trains to meet demand, putting Via Rail Canada back on a sound financial footing and ready to build on that foundation across the country. Transport Action's members and supporters naturally had questions and concerns when this proposal was first unveiled. These included, why not build high speed as previously studied? Past governments had balked at those costs, and HFR was supposed to provide most of the benefits. Would smaller cities face service cuts? Assurances were forthcoming that that wouldn't be the case. Could the timings be achieved on the proposed Havelock alignment? We later saw data, that demonstrated the feasibility. How would this project compare with upgrading the existing route? Why diesel when electrification could eliminate all emissions? That even with dedicated tracks for most of the distance, a passenger rail act was still going to be absolutely vital for the times when you are interacting with freight and to make the rest of the network work? And what about the rest of Canada? Calgary, Edmonton, for example. And finally, would the government study, delay, and ultimately fail to act just like Ecotrain, Via Fast, and every other study in the last 40 years, while Canada falls further and further behind its global peers on rail? 8 years later, the last of those fears seems pretty accurate. Yves Deschamps-Siciliano and his colleagues launched extensive public consultations in 2016. And the information provided to Transport Canada included a business plan, ridership, infrastructure studies, all done by Sistra, checked by international peers, and a Class 3 estimate. HFR was decision-ready by summer of 2018, but our government hesitated. Had it followed its Crown Corporation's advice, HFR would already be in the final stages of construction today and in service by 2025. Instead, the JPO was created with the Canada Infrastructure Bank in 2019 with a mandate to de-risk the project and a budget of $71 million. The tasks it was assigned, including further engagement with Indigenous communities, do not appear to have been accomplished. Its report wasn't published, an access to information request obtained in heavily redacted form. What we have seen, what the public has seen, wasn't worth $71 million. In 2021, Minister Alghabra made announcements that indicated HFR was indeed finally going ahead. It looked as though the impact assessment would start that fall. Then we had an election. Things went quiet. That IA didn't start. And then on March 9th, 2022 came the bombshell. What had been Via Rail Canada's $4 billion project to rebuild about 80 miles of track between Havelock and Glen Tay and upgrade the rest had been turned into a mega project with a procurement timeline stretching out towards the end of the decade, in which Via Rail is to be shoved aside and the entire Quebec-Windsor corridor outsourced to a private partner taking on revenue risk over a concession period of 30 or more years, and with scope creep potentially driving the cost back to $12 billion, more like Ecotrain. Long-awaited start of procurement should have been cause for celebration, but instead, morale at Via Rail took an absolute body blow from this. Nobody had been warned that that was coming. It is not clear how the rest of Via Rail services across Canada would survive without the corridor as their anchor. Nor is it clear how Via Rail is supposed to grow service to continue meeting demand and fully utilising the new fleet that is now being delivered between now and the mid-2030s. And the government provided no explanation for this pivot. The page on procurement models in that JPO report was blacked out. There are some really good reasons I can think of for not doing it. Key factors, the factors that will determine long-term demand and ridership, are completely out of a private partner's control. Will Canada become a country of 50 million, 60, 70? What will our immigration policy be in the mid-2060s? Will we get any better at distributing growth across the country? Or will we stall as other countries do better than us at accepting international qualifications? What will our housing policy be? Cornwall and Brockville, for example, haven't been set high targets for new homes. But with the frequent trains to Ottawa and Montreal that they've been promised, they could really grow. Peterborough could become a city of 250,000, but only if other policies make that possible. With gas tax revenues falling as our cars electrify, how are we going to price and subsidise highways? How will other competing modes be regulated? Will European-style competition be brought to the rails, as was previously discussed? Asking the private sector to price these unknowable risks rather than the controllable risks of project delivery is illogical. There is a herd of public policy elephants in the room stomping across their balance sheet. The resulting hefty risk premium will end up being paid by taxpayers and passengers. And if a private partner gets in difficulties, they can leave taxpayers to pick up the bill. The United Kingdom's experience has been a fiasco, even with shorter time horizons for ridership forecasts. And it's also notable that the proponents in the recent phase were only asked to provide a Class 5 estimate, so we've gone backwards. The only justification we've been given for this outsourcing is to import the expertise of a Deutsche Bahn or an SNCF. We do not need to do that.
Sorry, Mr. Johnson, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your remarks, please.
Okay. The key to their success as European railways is solid policy and financial backing from their governments. And what Transport Action Canada and its members ask our government to do is give Via Rail solid policy and financial backing to get the job done. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Et prochainement, Monsieur
Next up, we have Mr. Mescott. Mr. Mescott, you have the floor. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today about the high-frequency train project. My name is Patrick Mescott, and I'm the chairman of the board of the Chambre de commerce et d'industrie de Trois-Rivières, or the Chamber. Our chamber has 750 members, and we have been a key player in Trois-Rivières' economy for 141 years. Our support for the high-frequency train project goes back a long way. Since 1982, the Chamber has been campaigning for the creation of a new mode of rail transport that would pass through our city. Over the years, the Chamber has written 2 briefs, sent several letters of support for the project to the Department of Transportation, and held various conferences with several ministers of transport and with Via Rail to promote the project among our members. With this mobilization, you can see that the Chamber has been campaigning for this project for over 40 years. And 40 years later, we still firmly believe in it, and we're still here for it. Trois-Rivières is well situated geographically. Our city is a strategic point between Quebec City and Montreal and is the economic hub of the Mauricie, a region, I may add, which is experiencing tremendous growth. Its proximity to the St. Lawrence River makes it a point of entry for merchandise through the port of Trois-Rivières, which is an ultra-efficient institution. And that's without even counting our airliner-capable airport, which has just benefited from a $20 million investment to expand its terminal. You can therefore understand that rail transport is the missing link to complete the range of services offered by sea and air transport. This is one of the reasons why the high-frequency train project is so important for our members and for Trois-Rivières as a whole. In the midst of a labor shortage and uncertain economic times, Trois-Rivières and its neighboring towns now have the chance to benefit from significant investments through the Provincial Energy Transition Valley Initiative. Indeed, the Quebec government has announced the creation of this innovation zone stretching from Bécancour to Shawinigan, which will bolster industry and offer opportunities for quality, well-paid jobs. Clearly, these new labor needs can only be met by the existing pool of employees in the Mauricie and Centre du Québec regions. This is where a major transportation project like HFR comes into play. I should also mention the possibility for local workers and entrepreneurs to travel quickly and easily to Montreal or Toronto to develop their businesses or grow their companies. This is one of the advantages HFR has that is particularly important for our members. From a tourism standpoint, Trois-Rivières has great potential, thanks to top-quality facilities such as the Amphithéâtre Cogeco, the Videotron Coliseum, numerous festivals, and an active, vibrant cultural life. HFR would facilitate access to these infrastructure and cultural activities for tourists from near and far. In closing, I'd like to stress the importance of having significant rail transportation service capacity in Canada. This project will be essential to developing rural areas and freeing up traffic in the major centers. A stop in Trois-Rivières will spur our city's economic and social development and will dovetail nicely with Quebec's development. As I mentioned earlier, the Chamber has been campaigning for such a project for over 40 years. We may have been visionaries back then when we talked about high-frequency passenger trains stopping in Trois-Rivières, but in 2023, we're now convinced that it has become a necessity. The time has come to put this project on track to cement Trois-Rivières' place in Quebec and the Canadian economic landscape. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much, Mr. Mescott.
Today with Mr. Strahl. Mr. Strahl, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes for your opening remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us at the end of the working day. This is a new time slot for us, so appreciate you being here to participate with us. It's my understanding that in 2017, the original cost estimate to proceed with this project was about $6 billion, and as of the end of March in 2021, the revised cost estimate, again, the information we've gathered is about 10 to 12 billion, so doubled. The estimate doubled in cost in 5 years. Now, given that the cost of everything has gone up, we all know the inflationary pressures, the cost of borrowing has skyrocketed. What is the, and this question will be at first for the VIA team there, given those escalating price estimates, cost estimates prior to the inflation and interest rate crisis, how many more $1 billion do you think it will take to actually get this project built? What is the current estimate to get the project completed?
Thank you for the question. I cannot comment, of course, about the past estimates, but current situation is the following. The scope of the project could have been different, and the process in which we have embarked is to find a private partner consortium to better define what will be the scope, and of course, in that process, identify and refine what will the budget be. So it's difficult today to have precise number, or it would probably be imprudent to throw numbers because the scope is not defined. The corridor is, but the scope is not defined. The technology is not well defined yet. And I think we absolutely need the support of expertise in the private corporation to support us. So the process in which we are in the procurement process is to select that partner and work in co-development to provide Canadians with the best economical and operational solution in a few years to come.
But it would be safe to say that the price has not gone lower, that it would be above the $12 billion estimate that was released in 2021?
Well, 1,000 kilometers of above ground facilities, 1,000 kilometers of electric line, and 1,000 kilometers of moving parts to move 15 million people. I've done linear projects for 25 years. I think it's fair to assume that the estimate that you have are probably not adequate anymore, but I won't commit to any further numbers. And one of the things is that we want this process to be competitive. We want the private sector not only to help us, but to remain competitive and to compete one another. So we'll be in a position to provide better numbers in a few years' time.
I think certainly I heard the magic phrase of that the federal government was looking to de-risk the project from Mr. Johnson, and it cast my mind back to the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which of course was purchased for over, when that was purchased by the government from the private sector, the cost estimate was $5 billion. And we now know that the cost to complete that project is over $30 billion. So given that you're essentially operating in the same environment, it likely will be a more expensive environment. And that project is now 572% over budget or over cost estimate. I realize you don't want to be pinned down on a number, but how can you why wouldn't this project similarly go from 5 or 6 billion to over 30 billion? And that's the record that we have with this government and big infrastructure projects like the pipeline. So I guess I'm trying to get some reassurance from you that this won't turn into another massive cost overrun where taxpayers end up picking up the tab.
We're fairly early stage in the process, so the estimate that we would share would be pre-FID. So we're not talking about potential cost overrun, but evaluating the best estimate, which we don't have at this point in time. But the concern is legitimate, considering, of course, everyone is following what's happening on the construction side. One of the particular aspect of the process that was suggested to us is a co-development. So instead of having only the private sector or only a Crown Corporation isolated to work and defining the scope, is that the mandate that we have is to take adequate time and with the right resources to pin down the right scope for Canadians and ensure that what we build is at the right cost, is affordable, but is also economical for the future. So cost is one thing, but
and I just have another minute here. So I wanted to get an idea of the per passenger, the envisioned per passenger subsidy, what the current one is in the current Windsor to Quebec City corridor. If you can provide that number and how you anticipate the current subsidy from the government per passenger. If you don't have that number in terms of what it is now and what you estimate how that will change with the new project, or what that number will be, if you could table that with the committee, if you were able to get that number, I think it's germane to taxpayers again to know, is that changing? Will they be expected to subsidize passengers more as these costs go up and as this new project rolls out?
We can certainly find the information of the current situation. I don't have, but if it's public, we'll make it available for the future. Those numbers don't exist because the economic model is not defined. But one of the mandate that we have is to limit over time and during the operation phase the subsidy for the operation and the corridor between Quebec and Toronto.
Merci, Mr. Amlot. Thank you very much. Prochainement, nous avons Monsieur
Next, we have Mr. Iacono. You have the floor. You have 6 minutes.
And welcome, and gentlemen, to our committee tonight to enlighten us on all on HFR. Mr. Imblot, congrats on your new position, and thank you for all the good work you've accomplished at Port of Montreal. Indeed, I do agree with you. It is an ambitious project. Briefly, why do we need high-frequency rail between Toronto and Quebec City?
Because 50 million people don't have the adequate service to move around, which is detrimental to the economy. And we took the train today. The team took the train today, and it took a very long time. So we're using other options. We're still using our personal cars, or we're taking the plane, which in the 21st century is probably not the right way to go. And I made a joke to someone else before, but trains like sausage. The more we build them, the more they will be used. And that's exactly what is happening everywhere in the world. And for climate purposes, but for economic purposes, that corridor between 3 capitals, 2 of the largest cities, does not have an adequate train service that is desperately needed. So I think the law of gravity is just there to justify it.
Thank you. Question from Mr. Johnson. We hear lots of voices calling for high-speed rail instead of high frequency. In your view, how should the extra costs associated with HFR be accounted for? Should this be paid through higher fares? Should the cost be shared by different levels of government? Briefly, please.
So this is one of the big questions that we get from a lot of our supporters and members. But there is a really good reason HFR originally avoided it, which is that when you go above 110 miles an hour, costs, hockey stick, costs go up a lot because you've got to grade separate everything, you've got to realign all the curves, etc. And the project takes many years longer to build. And if the cost of this project doubles, that means there's other projects that Canada cannot deliver, the other parts of the countries that don't get a train service. So that's where we would say that there is a real problem with what's happening here, in that the cost and the scope of this is getting further ahead. And remember that the original idea was that there would no longer be a need for a subsidy in the Quebec-Windsor corridor. In fact, Via Rail Canada would make a small surplus which could be redirected to the rest of its services across Canada.
Approximately how much more would it cost to deliver an entirely high-speed project as opposed to high frequency? And what effect would that have on fares and on ridership?
We don't have the delta cost to do a full fast train, but allow me that precision. I think we're embarking on a false debate about what is frequent, what is fast, because there's many definitions of what a TGV or a fast train is out there. The reality is that the proposal is to build a train that is as frequent, as fast, as reliable, and as economic as possible. So is it 200, 210, 225? We will define what it is, what is optimal in a corridor to serve what we think will be used by 17 million passengers in 20 years from here.
And pouvez-vous nous expliquer quel sera
Can you explain to us precisely what role VIA will play, via HFR will play, and what role it will play as distinguished from the Transportation Canada and Via Rail? Our role will be to continue in the supply role, but as of next year, we will be the ones responsible for carrying out the work, and we will work with our partners in the private sector. We will choose solutions, find the right arbitration mechanisms, and be the party that accompanies the private sector and then makes ultimately the proposal to the competent authorities. We will be putting all forces together to make this adequate representation. And lastly, Mr. Mascotte, I understand that in an ideal world, it would be a high-speed train. If it is determined that this is too costly, would you still favor an HFR train with more frequent stops and more on-time stops and greater fidelity? Our position on the HFR versus high-speed train debate is the following. We do not have necessarily the expertise to choose one direction or the other. What we think is important is that there is a stop in Trois-Rivières to help develop its local economy. We know full well that passengers need to be able to get out of their cars and then get into the train, and that there will be rail between one city to the next. And for that, you need the appropriate installations to work during transportation. So is a hybrid mode the correct solution? We don't necessarily have an opinion on that, but for us, the most important thing is that there's a stop in Trois-Rivières. I know that the final trajectory hasn't been finalized. What are the factors that are taken into account for this? The number of passengers, distance, the economic factors. Also, in our mandate letters we received from the department, there have been predetermined stops that are absolute musts, and so that has been determined in the past. And then with a private partner, we'll have to figure out the correct arbitration to find out where to stop in order to offer the best services. Of course, the less stops we make, the faster it is. So this will be the decision made at that point. We'll have but we have very specific instructions from the department. Thank you, Mr. Iacono, and thank you, Mr. Blou. Next up, we have Mr. Barcelou-Duval. Up to you. The floor is yours for 6 minutes. I'll start with Mr. Blou. Congratulations on your appointment to your new position. I'm very proud to have a citizen of my riding to be at the helm of this project. I hope that I know that you'll do a good job and that you'll be able to offer a great service at a low cost that's very fast too. My first question for you is the following. This is something that many people must be asking themselves. It's not necessarily related to the other questions that were asked today, but it is the following. Every time there's a major infrastructure project, we look at local content. We know that Quebec has industrial capacity. We have expertise. Quebec has the kind of people who can build the trains that can go on the HFR rails, or even on high-speed rails. I would like to know, based on your mandate and your vision, is there a willingness to ensure profits in Quebec, given that Quebec has that expertise? Thank you for your compliments. I'll try not to put your constituents to shame here. This is a civil engineering project, first and foremost. We are building civil engineering infrastructure, so it is done locally. Rails, electrical lines are built locally. So at the outset, the project will maximize Canadian profits based on geography. And it's really the local entrepreneurs that will reap the benefits. Second, we must respect our international commitments with regard to the economy, and we'll have to put out requests for proposals to choose the right firms to work with. But I'd say it's mostly civil engineering, and civil engineering is done locally. What about the locomotives and the wagons? It's a very minor part of the budget. So in terms of profits and economic profits, the wagons and others are quite limited when compared to the rest of the budget. So even if we go in that direction, it's more profitable in terms of engineering. But I will remind members that we have international commitments to meet. From what I understand, there are no commitments in that direction. We would like that. I just wanted to hear you say what you had to say about that. I know that there are good jobs in Quebec, and we need to maintain those jobs. On the other hand, if the offers coming from Quebec are competitive, why not consider them? Indeed. I have another question for you. There is a debate between high-frequency rail and high-speed rail, and what you're saying is it's not a matter of speed. Maybe you can go over it again when I finish my question, but many people have said that HFR, or high frequency rail, would be as fast as the current trains, and that there would only be a minor difference in the length of the trip between Montreal and Quebec City, for instance. So at the end of the day, when we're talking about the interest in building another rail in order to not gain a whole lot of time, is it worth the investment? And then, on the other hand, will there be a good amount of people changing their ways from cars and planes to trains? Do we consider that as possible, given that it's not that much faster? Thank you for your question. One thing I should have said in my opening statement is that there's not any more space left to add any trains on the corridor because the railroads belong to others. So if we want to eliminate or allow people rather to go into trains, there's not enough space for them. These lines belong to railroad companies, so we need to build something new. Second, reliability is crucial. I'll give you an example. We left late and we arrived late. Reliability and the trains running on time will be an important factor going forward. Third, based on personal experience, you have traveled like me in Europe, for instance. I regularly take the train in Europe, and I went from Paris to Brussels and Brussels to Amsterdam. Same train, same service, super quick. Paris, Brussels was 300 kilometers in 1.5 hours. Same train going to Amsterdam, 220 kilometers in 2 hours. Why? Because the train stopped more frequently in densely populated areas. So this is an arbitrary choice based on the environmental profits and other factors. It's the same thing with the corridor. If you want to start in Peterborough and then end in Trois-Rivières to create wealth, you need to have a train that's adapted to the communities it's serving. Maybe just to add a little bit more specificity to my question here, the train is reliable and 2 to 3 hours. But if you take the car, it takes maybe 10 minutes less. You know, when you have your car, you're free to go and leave. You don't have to deal with where the stations are and other factors related to transportation on the trains. So how can you make this really attractive for people? I, at the end of the day, want to see a train, and I really do hope that people come to it in droves and that it connects both downtown cores. If it takes, however, a little bit more time, I don't understand why people would continue taking that train if they can get between those cities by car. I would like to see a real incentive, 15 seconds. It would be quicker to take the train than to go by car, and we are going to position the stations appropriately in order to create incentives, and there will be quick services offered. Thank you very much.
Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome to all of our witnesses. Thanks for being with us this evening. I'm looking forward to this study. I think it's going to be of interest to a lot of Canadians. And I'd like to start my questions with Mr. Johnson. What you had to say about this project was very enlightening, particularly all of the twists and turns it's taken since its first iteration. And I'd like to start from the perspective of being a British Columbia MP representing a rural region in the northwest of the province that's thousands of kilometers from here and has a passenger rail system that is a mere shadow of what it used to be. And when I talk to people about train service or bus service for that matter, so many people talk to me about their vision of having reliable and effective passenger rail service. And yet the current VIA service through our region is terribly unreliable. It can't be used as basic transportation, only as a tourist sort of opportunity. And so when we look at this idea of essentially privatizing Canada's busiest passenger rail corridor and the source of some 85% of Via Rail's revenue, we're going to hand all that over, including the conventional Via service along that corridor, to a private company and take it out of Via's hands entirely. It would seem that our public passenger rail provider in this country is going to be left with the guts and feathers of passenger rail. And I'm very concerned about what the fate of rail service in other parts of the country is going to be. Can you, kind of play the tape forward 20 years? What does this look like for Via Rail?
What this looks like is potentially that if the rest of Via Rail continues to be operated as a public service, it needs a very, very much larger subsidy to provide all the core services that are currently shared with the corridor. And that, I think, would actually be something that we fear wouldn't actually happen at all, and that you would, in fact, see trains like the Skeena just disappear, because the government would look at that and say, well, we can't possibly subsidize that. Whereas the original vision of HFR was to triage the corridor, build a strong financial foundation, build from it, be able to look at Calgary-Edmonton, be able to rebuild our long-distance services, be able to support our remote services to northern and indigenous communities. That the surplus of this project, all of the benefits of this project would be for Canadians and would flow back into making our network stronger. And that is our largest concern with this, is that by taking revenue risk and putting it on the table, it's going to cost more. It's going to be years before we even begin to lay any track. And at the end of the day, it's going to cost Canadians more for the same train that we had a blueprint for in 2018 and could have got on with building.
A very stark contrast in those two visions. Investing in public rail and the capacity of our public passenger rail provider, and then seeing those benefits across the country, versus privatizing the cash cow of passenger rail in Canada and letting the rest of the rail system wither on the branch. If I understand you correctly, those are sort of the two pictures you've painted. But I'd like to turn to another aspect, which is, and this builds on the idea of investing in the capacity of our government and our public passenger rail provision here in Canada. It's rather ironic that the three consortiums that have been selected to compete for this project include a number of rail companies from Europe that are publicly owned. So essentially, other countries have invested in their capacity in terms of public passenger rail and have built up the expertise to the point where we have to pay them to come and build trains in our country. Is that an irony that is accurate?
Actually, it's an irony that people think exists, but isn't even actually accurate. At the moment, we have in the GTA, we have On Express partners who've been selected to do co-development for Go Expansion. They are hiring. They are hiring hundreds and hundreds of positions for Canadians. So they're hiring the same people that Metrolinx could have hired directly. And this will be the same here. The Via Rail already worked with Sistra, already worked with the private partners, was already going to work with private construction industries to build the new infrastructure. The only thing that's changed is now operations is on the table. And there's no great secret to doing train operations. And if you want to know how SNCF does something, you pick up a phone. Bonjour, how do you do this thing?
So what you're saying is
there are no trade secrets here. There's a tremendous amount of transparency in this industry because they are all public. Via Rail is perfectly capable of running the service. The building of it was always going to involve the private sector. Projects always do. But the operation doesn't need to be outsourced.
What you're saying essentially is that we have the capacity to a large extent in Canada. We're just going to lose it to the private sector and then have to buy it back at a higher price. Is that?
That would be accurate as to what our fear is about this project.
Okay. Mr. Chair, how many minutes do I have left?
You have 30 seconds left, Mr.
Oh,
Bachrach.
30 seconds. Well, perhaps I'll ask my question and then wait till a future round to hear the answer. But a lot of the concern is around the difference between a public procurement model and these P3 models that this Liberal government seems so entranced by. And, of course, here in Ottawa, residents have some pretty tumultuous experience with the P3 model. And I would just read this quote from the Ottawa LRT inquiry, which noted that the P3 model caused or contributed to several of the ongoing difficulties of the project. So I'm wondering how the experience of the LRT could relate to what we're talking about with this HFR project. And I'll leave the answer for the next round. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we have Mr. Muse. Mr. Muse, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for your time, and including those that are online. So just for a bit of context, and I know that you're representing via HFR and not via, but maybe you have some knowledge, I hope, of the marketplace, because I just want to understand a little bit more business case, because I know my constituency is in Hamilton. Next door to us in Brantford, the Train 82, which went from Brantford into Union Station in Toronto, was just recently reinstated. There were a number of trains that I think feed into the Toronto GTA hub that would hopefully then connect to future HFR or other such train service that were paused during the pandemic and have only just begun to be reinstated. So, Kitchener, London, Barrie. I mean, what's sort of the marketplace in the feeder routes into Toronto? Do you know, or?
I personally wouldn't know exactly what the business case and number of passengers and economic specifically for that region. Maybe my colleague can comment on it, but unfortunately I wouldn't have that input today.
The Department of Transport will also come testify. I would politely ask that you redirect the question to them, because there are some studies around like trends outside of the corridor. Like our mandate is pretty restricted to the corridor, but
right. But
there
I mean,
are some
obviously
works
it doesn't operate in a vacuum, right? So, okay. So, put that aside then. You talked about, of course, the different model, fast and on time. Has there been any sort of studies in terms of what is the percentage anticipated uptick in ridership as a result of that versus the existing service?
Yeah, because of the improvement of the system and the dedicated track aspect, we feel that, or we think that the passenger usage will jump significantly. Today it's around 4 million to 17 million usage by mid of the century. So it's huge increase, and with a significant reduction of the GHG emitted by individual cars as a side effect.
Is there a range, or is there an estimate? How many riders how many riders on an annual basis need to be taking this service in order to make it a go? And what year in the years of operation do we reach before we get to the point of break even?
Break even is probably not the right approach. It's like thinking when on a highway will meet its breaking even. It basically does not happen because large infrastructure like this are not developed by government for nothing. It's because it needs significant implication from the government. So there's a large part of it that will come from funds from the government, and our job is to keep it as low as possible and ensure that we have the right balance with the private partner to make a service that is affordable.
Do we know how many riders? I mean, you talked about 4 to 17.
To make it economic, if it was completely independent, we haven't made that economic because it's probably a moot point, because it's something that has to be supported by federal subsidy for sure. There's no doubt about it. Just like in a highway, so how much depends on the usage, which we will refine during the co-development process, and we'll be happy to share it at one point in time.
Sure. If I may ask Mr. Hampshire, because I read your background, and you have, of course, quite a level of expertise in different train services in Europe and other places in the world. So what do you see as the potential and the pitfalls going into this?
Thank you for your question. I think one needs a balanced approach here. One needs to take the best of the public sector that we've seen in Europe and the best of the private sector. I don't quite share the doomsday scenario presented by my colleague on the left concerning UK Rail, because I was involved in that for a number of years. There were significant benefits of involving the private sector. The model has now moved on. The model has matured. And we can learn lessons from that, I think.
If I could ask Mr. Johnson, because you cited the $71 million, I think if I'm remembering this correctly, that was wasted up front. Can you break that down and maybe you did and I missed it, as to what that 71 million comprised of, and then therefore your concern about cost overruns going forward and where those are going to be borne, because you said the taxpayer and the riders are going to bear this cost.
The most important point is that even before the Joint Project Office was created, the ridership forecast existed. The business plan existed. The infrastructure assessment existed. All of those things had already been paid for by Via Rail Canada. All that money had already been spent. The only thing we haven't done with that is publish it, to have the transparency, to share with the public the real details, to back up the assertion that, yes, this thing is actually going to carry 12 million, 17 million passengers. Here's the model that shows this is where this is going, and these are what our assumptions are about how our cities might grow, and all of the other public policy parts of this. All of that already existed before the Joint Project Office was created. The Joint Project Office was supposed to do things like secure land. It hasn't done it. There have been so many missteps. The Mount Royal Tunnel was let go. All these kind of things that money should have done, it didn't do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, and thank you very much, Mr. Muse.
Thank you.
Prochainement, nous avons Madame Koutrakis. Madame Koutrakis, la parole.
Next. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much to all the witnesses who are with us here tonight. Congratulations, Mr. Amblot, for your new position, and thank you very much for the service you have already given to the public when in your position at the Port of Montreal. It's very appreciated. A few questions for you. Can you explain why HFR is a public-private partnership? Does the Government of Canada have the expertise it needs to carry out such a complex civil engineering project? And our friends in the NDP believe that a public-private partnership will only increase the cost of the project. What do you have to say about that? Thank you, Ms. Koutrakis. It's nice to see you. I think in the case we have today, it is truly the best of both worlds. A delegation in the private sector without the supervision of a properly staffed entity would be us acting a bit with our eyes closed. To develop this project at the government level would be difficult and would probably not benefit from the various technological innovations, competitiveness between firms, and other factors. So it's probably the best of both worlds situation here. I don't think it would be more expensive. Costs are costs. Management makes a difference when it comes to the bottom line. The capital costs, sure, are a factor, but the model will be essentially a very important factor on costs at the end of the day. Thank you. I know that you don't have the full schedule, the definitive schedule at this point. What factors are taken into account when determining the schedule and of the train? I have questions with the mayor of Laval. Will there be a stop in Laval, for instance? This is a legitimate question. Everyone wants to have access to the train. There are many factors. There's distance, the number of stops, population density, geography is an important factor. There are train rails, the sharing of railroads, the distance, and the way in which you go around obstacles. There's many factors at play here. So therefore, there's an arbitration process based on the environment and the costs in order to offer the best possible services. Thank you very much. Mr. Mascotte. Many stakeholders in Quebec are asking for HFR. Who do you believe should be paying the higher costs associated with that? And do you believe that the government of Quebec or the municipality of Trois-Rivières would be ready to contribute to this more elevated cost? If so, how? Has this been discussed by your organization? Thank you for your question. The debate in Quebec of HFR versus high-speed train has started anew. As I've mentioned a little earlier, I think a hybrid system will be the optimal solution on certain rails. Some could have high speed, some could have high frequency. I'm not an expert on this, however. When it comes to costs, it's important to understand that these investments are made with the international outlook in mind and competition in mind. Connecting the regions to major urban city centers will bring forth major rural economic development. We have the innovation corridor in Quebec. You know about the battery industry. There's GM and other plants. There's Ford. There's major industrial players who are coming in our region in Trois-Rivières and in Quebec. So to have a major network will be great for the economy for all Canadians. So to answer your question, is Trois-Rivières ready to invest massively? Well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of Trois-Rivières. That hasn't particularly studied that specific point, so I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much, Mr. Mascotte and Ms. Koutrakis first, and then we have Mr. Barcelo-Duval for 3.5 minutes. Micro. I'll continue with the same witness. Thank you for being here today. Mr. Mascotte, you spoke a lot about the fact that Trois-Rivières wants a stop. Our MP René Villeneuve has often told us in caucus that it is important to have a stop in Trois-Rivières. But this is something that any city would say. Why Trois-Rivières? Why is Trois-Rivières a must? Maybe the people around the room, aren't all from Quebec. They don't necessarily know Trois-Rivières. Maybe it's worth it if you make your case for Trois-Rivières and say why it's important for the people in the room here. Trois-Rivières is experiencing tremendous economic growth and has been doing so in recent years. We have UQTR, the Université du Québec à Trois-Rivières, that has been at the vanguard of innovation and green hydrogen projects, for instance. These are factors that the government of Quebec took into account when they positioned Mauricie and Centre-Québec as a major innovation zone. This area has a tremendous potential for growth. Let's take Bécancour, for example. Bécancour has one of the most significant industrial parks in all of Canada, and it paves the way for major industry. There's GM and Ford coming to our region. And this means that the region is vibrant. The governments of Quebec and Canada have subsidized our airport to expand our terminal. Things are happening in Trois-Rivières. There's a port, there's an airport, and the train stop would allow us to spur our economy even more. There are increasing numbers of tourists. Tourists are coming from Europe, for instance, through cruise ships. And Canadians are coming as well. We have become a choice tourist destination. Unfortunately, there's no more time, Mr. Barcelo-Duval. Next, we have
Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The fixation of both Liberal and Conservative governments on public-private partnerships has always seemed a bit more of an ideological fixation rather than being based on an objective evaluation. And we have the Auditors General of both British Columbia and Ontario who analyzed dozens of P3 projects and found that they're more likely to cost taxpayers more and run behind schedule. So I'm really fascinated by the decision making to go with this model for the HFR project. And our research shows that the government analyzed 20 different Canadian and international transportation projects when assessing procurement options. None of those 20 used public procurement models. And I'm wondering, to Mr. Imblo, I understand that he's new in the position. Why does he think that is? Not a single one.
Well, first, I have to be humble about the fact that we inherited of a mandate to do a procurement process that was decided by other authorities. So I respect that decision. That being said, to the risk of repeating myself, having the mix of building the intelligence and the expertise internally while relying on the expertise of the private sector and the innovation, in this case, we think is the right approach.
And to Mr. Johnson, if we were to look around the world and if we could go back in time and have the government do a fair analysis of rail projects that have been publicly procured versus ones that have been privately procured, where would we look for public examples?
That's actually a good question. But I just wanted to make one thing clear. We're not opposed to the private sector. We are opposed to getting this wrong. We want to be very, very pragmatic about this. One of the lessons of the Ottawa LRT project is that the public partner wasn't sufficiently sophisticated. So actually, it's very good that we have very skilled people being brought into the VIA HFR team to hold the public part of this project down. And but the thing is that, and the original plan was a public-private partnership, but one for infrastructure, one that would be an availability payment-based project for the infrastructure. So those are quite common. Totally outsourcing your entire railway isn't very common. In fact, the only the only equivalent I can think of is the deal that the Indonesians have just done with China for the HSR. But you could compare, for example, with what India has done, building its domestic capability.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. You had 15 seconds left. I don't know if you...
In my next round.
Okay, sounds
Mr.
good.
Chair.
Next, we have Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Thank you very much to the witnesses for this late evening meeting, but a very important meeting, no doubt. Very, very critical meeting, and thanks so much for your testimony. The first question I have, which is a really simple question, I think, and it'll be directed both to Mr. Imblo and to Mr. Johnson. So my riding of Essex, right next to Windsor, busiest international border crossing in North America. Does it make sense to either of you gentlemen, just briefly, that we would now call it the Toronto-Quebec corridor and not go back to the Windsor-Quebec corridor when we could potentially tie in the United States into this, the likes of Chicago and whatnot? Are we walking past a golden opportunity if we're doing the events? But anyways.
Well, the mandate is very specific, what we inherited, Mr. Lewis. It's really Quebec-Toronto. But we know that there are studies being done as we speak to look at other expansion done by, I think, Transport Canada. So it's out of our mandate, but maybe that question should be put to people of Transport Canada when they appear before this committee.
I would echo that. I've actually spoken with the study team that's been engaged from CPCS by Transport Canada to look at what they're calling HFR Phase 2 in southwestern Ontario. Now, the problem I have with that is that they're calling it Phase 2 because actually solving the problems in southwestern Ontario are much, much easier than solving the problem between Toronto and Ottawa. And we could be solving the problems today. We could be keeping some of the promises that were made 4 or 5 years ago, actually longer, about having multiple trains per day to Sarnia, 5 or 6 trains to Windsor and Essex, and we could be speeding the train from Windsor up by half an hour to Toronto easily. And we could do it today. Via Rail Canada can do it with the government's actual proper backing to implement plans that it's already made.
Johnson. So I'll just build on that quickly then. So earlier on, it was the word grain came up, and moving grain. And ironically, Windsor has a port, and we ship a lot of grain to, ironically, the Chicagos of the world, the Milwaukees of the world, and whatnot. So we talked about grain, which is awesome. Now let's talk about St. Thomas Battery Plant, Let's talk about the Windsor Stellantis battery plant to the tune of $12 billion investments. Let's talk about critical minerals that hopefully one day will be mined in the far northern of Ontario. And let's talk about not only getting people to the locations, but our critical minerals to these battery plants that are supposed to fulfill about $5,000 new jobs, roughly. Would it not make sense then to actually do this in reverse to ensure that Windsor is actually the starting point and we move it east? It only makes sense to me with all of the infrastructure that's being put in place in these areas, but by the way, aren't remote. It's actually the hub of North America. Would you agree with me, Mr. Johnson, that this really needs to be looked at very, very closely to ensure we're not walking past an opportunity?
I think it really is a case of the right and the left hand can do two different things at the same time here. We can, and this is one of the problems with having separated Via Rail and Via HFR, is that Via Rail is in somewhat lame duck mode and doesn't know what it's supposed to do for the next 10 years to tackle the challenges we have right now. Whereas they could be doing all of the things at once, because some of these things, they're all synergistic. They all feed each other. And talking about freight, though, we really need to ask, why did we let the freight railroads abandon so much of their infrastructure and then tell us how they don't have any more capacity left for passenger trains? Because there was a perfectly good double-track line from Essex to St. Thomas 10 years ago, and it's all gone.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And Mr. Imblo, any final comments, sir? About 30 seconds.
Well, having more passenger train on freight train tracks doesn't make much sense for the reason that you've mentioned. I just don't see in 50 years having passenger train running on diesel between city, still slowing down freight train because the economy is growing. In any event, the corridor we're developing, we should have dedicated tracks. No comment on the specific location, but in general, we should get out of the way and have our both dedicated tracks.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Lewis. Next, we have Mr. Badaway. Mr. Badaway, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank the witnesses for coming out today to give us their testimony. You know, folks, this project will be the largest transportation project in 60 years for this country. And quite frankly, it's exciting that we're all taking part in this process. And I believe, as I said to Mr. Lewis earlier, you know, this goes beyond party politics. This is a team effort by all parties to actually get this project off the ground and get it built to then bring our transportation system up to the year 2023 as it relates to moving people. The second point I want to make is, and this is probably the most important point, is that it will further galvanize the country. No question. It will galvanize the country from Quebec on into the west and even into the east, and strengthen a multimodal network, in particular as it relates to movement of people. We do recognize that we have a very robust system in the movement of trade, albeit it is fluid and it can be improved. A multimodal network. I know in my neck of the woods in Niagara, we've been very blessed with a very strong Niagara Ports trade corridor that takes full advantage of the St. Lawrence Seaway, the Welland Canal, as well as the main and short line rail networks and road, as well as air. So with that said, I do want to ask and be very clear on this process and the best way to take it. When we look at, and going to Mr. Lewis's comments, and I think it was very appropriate comments with respect to, you know, concentrating, yes, now on the movement of people, but equally as important is ensuring that we also make more robust the movement of trade in those market-ready areas when it comes to the new sectors that we're actually trying to strengthen, like the mineral sector in the north. And of course, with that, having the proper infrastructure in place with those growth-related areas. So I'm going to go to Mr. Imblo. And by the way, congratulations on your new position. The Port of Montreal's loss, and now Via's VHFR's gain. But with that, the question is I would like you to just to be very clear on the process, both from the capital side and the operational side, and how this is going to roll out with respect to your participation and the partners that are going to come on board to make this happen and get the job done.
Thank you for the question. It's funny you mentioned the Maritime St. Lawrence Seaway, because I wrote that down as being the most significant endeavor done in the country.
That's right.
And Canada wouldn't be what it is today in the world without that endeavor that was built decades ago. Today, we're in the procurement phase. We will pick by late summer next year one consortium with which we will co-develop the project. So we'll embark on a process, us, our team, and them, to find the best solution, do the alignment, do the impact assessment, find the economic balance. And at the end of that process, that will last a couple of years because it's very detailed, we will make a final investment decision. Government of Canada will invest in the project. The private partner will invest in a project in the proportion that needs to be determined in the process. And at that point in time, the private partner will also operate facilities that will be kept on Canada's books. So we will own the asset, but the operator will operate our asset at that point in time.
Great. And we talk about different areas that we're going to be investing in. What are your thoughts on or anticipation with respect to eventually extending HFR into southwestern Ontario?
As we mentioned before, I think there's a study being done that I'm learning is called Phase 2, or an extension to other regions. Our mandate is really to stop in Toronto. If the mandate were to change, we would look at it. So I'm sorry to be...
Well, this is a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress, and I asked the question deliberately for that reason, because we're all working together here to come to that end. And so with that said, do you also see the possibility down the road that short-line operators may be part of this overall network?
I'm sorry, I missed who?
Short-line operators.
The intent is to have our private partner operate all of the facility in the corridor between Quebec and Toronto, to have one single operator, because they will be taking the operational risk at that point in time, also to reduce the taxpayer exposure to the risk of the operation.
Essentially, you're going to have a spine going east to west, but is there a possibility where you might use short-line operators to actually come off that spine into certain jurisdictions?
For spur lines and that type of facility? Mm-hmm. Well, if we build it, they will come for sure. We'll have hub-to-hub main services, and then we'll have spur lines. It's how things were developed elsewhere. So the same thing will happen in Canada, in the country, I think.
Last question: what would it mean for Canada if this project were to be abandoned?
I close my eyes and I see myself in 40 years, and we would be the only G7 country without having that type of services.
Let's make sure this doesn't happen. Let's get the job right and get her done.
And still riding on diesel train on non-dedicated track, they would be the only country, and our two capitals wouldn't be linked. So I just don't see not happening.
Perfect. So let's end off on a good note. Let's make sure she gets done.
Thank you, Mr. Badaway. Next, we have, for our final round, to begin our final round, we have Mr. Strahl. Mr. Strahl, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Mr. Imblot, he's referenced a number of times his mandate letters, that sort of thing. Are those public documents? I know that the minister's public mandate letters are public. Are you able to table those with the committee?
Yes, they're all public, and they were part of my 800 pages briefing book.
Okay.
So
well, we'll
provide
for those,
them. We'll make them available if they're difficult to find.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You can find them in the corporate plan summary that is tabled by the minister in the House of Commons. So you do have...
Okay, but appreciate that. Thank you for that direction. I guess in your comments, Mr. Imblot, you mentioned how getting passengers off of the current line and onto the new service would improve freight traffic. Obviously, if they're not sharing the track, they would have more ability to move more volumes quicker. But I assume that you would know how many VIA trains would be coming off that current line and onto the main line. I guess my question is, have you done the modeling to show by what volume the current line would be reduced, how many trains would be reduced, how many passengers would move off the current line onto the HFR line? And if that happens, how do you anticipate the communities that are currently served by the current corridor how will they react? Have you taken into account how their level of service dropping because of a lower frequency of trains there? How will that impact feeding into the hubs? I guess I'm a little concerned. That the reduction. How have you modeled how that reduction of service on the current line, how that will integrate with the HFR, or are those communities just going to see less and less service and therefore have to use other modes of transport to kind of access the HFR? Are they going to take a huge disadvantage to have those few communities along the route that are going to get stations on the HFR that they will benefit from?
I may have misspoken myself. The idea is not to cannibalize the existing system, but to keep the existing system rolling. It's really to offer incremental services on new services on dedicated tracks. So, like communities on the South Shore of Montreal will still be served by VIA. The intent is not to stop that service. It's really to come from 8 to 70 million passengers. It's really incremental services. If we could have done it on the existing track and be faster and reliable, someone else would have done it. We simply cannot have them because there's no flexibility with the other rail cargoes.
So I guess the question then is how can you say that freight volumes and efficiencies will be met if you're saying that the VIA traffic will be the same on the current corridor, and this will just be additional capacity? I guess I don't know. Maybe you can help me understand how those two things can both be true: the same amount of VIA traffic and increased freight and efficiencies and volumes.
Well, the intent is not to add any new services on the existing freight lines to deteriorate the system. So the current system might remain a bit the same, which has concern, but the incremental services or the incremental passengers would be on dedicated tracks and not affecting the freight trains. And we all went through a crisis over the last 2 years on the supply side and on the what we had in the shipping and the train industry. We know that how sensible it was, how sensitive it was. So keeping the reliability of the freight train is as important. So we don't want to increase the burden of CNCP and other operators.
Okay, and so you're saying that the levels of service that the communities along the route right now will not deteriorate, will not be diminished, because the HFR is running and is not serving those. They will continue to have access to the current level of VIA services that they enjoy today when this is built.
I think what I said is it's not the intent to reduce the services. Will there be shift of passenger between communities because of the services are different? That remains to be seen and evaluated, but the intent is not to affect those services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strahl.
Okay, thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. Amblot. Next, we have Mr. Chahal. Mr. Chahal, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for presenting today. Mr. Imblot, I want to just start on some comments earlier made by the Chamber of Trois-Rivières, and I want to dig just a little bit deeper into, and my colleague, Monsieur Barcelou-Duval, also touched on it, but the process to look at stations or opportunities for stations. Do you have a specific criteria and a weighting associated to that criteria so communities know if they potentially would get a station close to their community?
There are stations that were on our mandate, clearly written by the minister's mandate, so those are known. If there were to be other stations, yes, we would develop a matrix that is, of course, take into consideration environmental, economic, passengers, feasibility. We'll have matrix, but I think it's fair to say that the intent is probably not to add too many stations because we want to have a fast, frequent, reliable service. So the corridor has already a different amount of stations predefined.
So if there be more stations to be added, you would be providing communities disclosure on what they would need to meet that criteria to get another station potentially?
Well, it is part of the discussion and optimization process that we will do with the private partner to see where is it more economic and feasible to add or not station down the road. So we'll do that and we'll make that public when it's done. But the intent is not, as I said, necessarily to add a lot of station to keep the service as fast as possible.
Thank you. Talked about diesel, but we've talked about electrification as well. Can you elaborate on your proposal for electrification and the benefits to it, the cost benefits of shifting over? And I have a follow-up to that on hydrogen. Why not look at hydrogen as option? Once again, the Chamber talked about green hydrogen. Why aren't we looking at hydrogen as the option? So both, you have two questions there.
It's funny because this is my background, hydrogen and electricity, so I'll come back to that second topic. The intent is to have a full electric trains. I said the intent because there may be some portion where it's constrained, where we'll have to rely on biodiesel or diesel electrics trains, like in serious congested communities. So we'll try to do our best to have everything electric, but we may have to rely on other technology.
Why can't you do it all electric?
It will depend on the efficiency then of batteries, because maybe there's some points where we cannot have, how do you say in English, catenary? Catenary? I'm learning catenary. But in this case, typically, you run your train on different supply. So we'll see with what is available in terms of technology with the private partner. For the hydrogen, it's an interesting debate. You may have seen that one of the first significant hydrogen train developed in Germany has actually abandoned the technology because the full electric was just more efficient and cheaper to operate. So I think that's a lesson learned from a large operator, and we just took notice of it.
But there's other countries looking at hydrogen as the way to move forward. So as that one proponent may have failed, there may be others who are using a different technology. Is that still off the table completely, or is that something you're exploring? And the reason why I'm asking, I'm from Alberta. I should have told you that to begin with. And we're looking at a few projects. One part of the study, Calgary-Edmonton, Calgary to Banff. And if we look at full electrification, I'm not sure where we'll get the power from when we have currently our provincial Conservative governments put a moratorium on renewable energy, particularly. So when we think about energy production and the supply of electricity to power trains, when we got to power our homes moving forward and vehicles, I'm just wondering if we'll have enough electrification to meet all our demands and needs, or should we be looking at hydrogen? You can answer that. Maybe start with you, and then we'll jump over to you to finish.
Energy is always very local. In Quebec, we do benefit from green electricity to a certain extent. Same thing for Ontario. So I think it makes sense to look at the electrification. Would we consider other options? Well, I think one of the intent is to be influenced by the best technology that is economical and can be deployed economically for Canadians. So if there's a better solution, we'll consider it for sure.
Sorry, Mr. Johnson, I think I'm out of time. I'm not sure if the chair...
It depends if Mr. Bachrach would like to give you 10 seconds of his time for this very important answer.
I'll cede 10 seconds of my time to Mr. Chahal with the hopes of some forbearance from the chair at the end of my remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Johnson?
I'm just very glad you mentioned Alberta, because in the case of a service which is less than hourly, hydrogen might economically stack up quite well. For an hourly service, especially at higher speed and higher energy intensity, the ability to feed breaking energy back into the catenary, etc., is absolutely vital. So it really is a horses for courses situation, but for high frequency or high speed, you're going to go full electric every time if you really just looking for the most efficient system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Prochainement, nous serons M. Barcel-Duval. À vous la parole, 2 minutes et demie.
Next off, Mr. Barcel-Duval, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. I'll get back to Mr. Amblot here. I said for the Port of Montreal, but no, not today. My question for you is the following. When you finished earlier, you said that in all scenarios, trains, you could get somewhere faster by train than by car. According to the data we have, it's about a 3-hour train trip versus, or for a HFR project, and it's a 2.5-hour car trip. what do you, or to have your partners rather found any evidence that this can be done faster? I said earlier that we asked for 2 different options. I'm happy to hear you talk about the Montreal-Quebec City rail project. From one downtown core to the other, it would be 2.5 hours by train. I'm not able to do that by car. In another scenario, it would be a 2 hour and 15 minutes, so that would be significantly faster. Thank you for your quick answer. And there's another thing you said in your answer. You said downtown to downtown. So you believe confidently that there will be a real access to the downtown core. The objective here is to find the best sites that are most cost effective and favor intermodality between various sites. There are within every municipality various sites that are considered, but we want to look at intermodality. You have 45 seconds. I'll see if we can hash this out in 45 seconds. Maybe Mr. Bacharach. Oh, okay. Anyways, this is a question I've been asking myself since the beginning. Maybe Mr. Johnson answered this as well. Via Rail was responsible. Now it's then it was the Infrastructure Bank, and now it's you. Why all these changes in leadership? It's hard for me to talk about the past. I think this is a project that is constantly evolving. We have been given a mandate of building a wide-ranging expertise and a innovative project lead and make the best choices for the decades to come. The most important thing for me is to draw in talent from around the world so that we can have the best possible project for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Boisseleau-Duval and Mr. Ambleau.
This evening, we have Mr. Bacharach. Mr. Bacharach, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pick up where my colleague, Mr. Boisseleau-Duval, left off talking about mode share and travel times between major centers. I met with Via Rail a couple years ago before the second iteration of the terms of reference were released and when they were still in charge of the project. And they said very clearly to me that they intended to compete with car trips between major centers, but that competing and stealing market share from short-haul flights was not on the table. They weren't interested in that. Now, there's some research from the OECD, and this is out of France, that showed, and I'll just read a quote from it. Once the journey time by rail exceeds the journey time by air by 1 to 2 hours, the market share drops to about 50% and decreases rapidly thereafter. So I'm wondering if now that higher speeds, at least on portions of the route, is on the table, whether this objective of reducing short-haul flights between major centers is going to be brought into the project as a key objective.
I'm not sure if it will be a key objective, but I think it will be a side benefit because I consider myself, if the train takes me Toronto, Montreal in 4 hours, definitely I will use the train every time because the delays and the certainty of being reliable and on time. So directionally speaking, it will probably increase the usage of the
And I don't fly Toronto, Montreal a lot, but in your view, would the HFR project deliver what this study says is necessary to capture that market share, not just from rail enthusiasts like yourself, but from people who are going to take the easiest and most economical option?
And again, it's going to be a personal one. I'm not necessarily a rail fanatic because I didn't use it before because it was not the service I was expecting. So if it's 4 hours between Toronto and Montreal, I will use the train all the time. So I'm expecting the business community at least to change their habit, drop the cars, drop the plane, and use the train.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bacharach, and I agree with Mr. Badaway. That is a good line and a good slogan. You might want to take that down. Je veux remercier nos témoins pour leur.
I'd like to thank our witnesses for being with us tonight, whether virtually or in person.
hour. Thank you for sharing your expertise with the committee and contributing to this very important study. With that, I'll excuse the witnesses, thank them again, and we will suspend for 5 minutes as we go in camera to discuss important issues. We'll be back in 5 minutes.